Many times when people hear the term mental health, especially depending on where your background is coming from, you could start already to think about maybe it's mental ill health or people that have removed their clothes and they're walking without clothes and blah 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 blah. But mental health is something that is interesting and it's something that will be worthwhile talking a little bit about it. And I realized the other day that when you're thinking about this channel, is all about nutri-food and total wellness. So which we talk about nutrition, we talk about food, but when you talk about total wellness, there is so much that you can think about in terms of exercise. I talk about exercise, and much. I post about exercises a lot. But when it comes to things like total wellness, I realize that total wellness involves so many different things. And as a person who is a Christian, I strongly believe in the Bible. There's that verse that says 3 John 2:1. I pray that above everything you will prosper and be in good health, even as your souls prosper, right? And I believe that if you want to have total wellness, it encompasses all the other aspects of yourself. It encompasses your emotional well-being. It encompasses your social well-being. It encompasses your mental well-being or mental health. And that is why today I thought I will be doing a video to talk or to cover on this topic of mental health. I like to begin by mentioning that I am not a psychiatrist, neither am I a psychologist. So I don't really have that background to talk much about mental health and all the mental illnesses and ill health. I've done mental health first aid, sorry, and I know a little bit about it, but that doesn't mean that I'm talking from a point of view that you should take this as a way of replacing. If you're already having issues that you're affected in any way and you're going through these diagnoses or whatever it is with your health professional, please do not replace that information that they're giving you with anything that you pick up on this channel. And so today I'm just going to talk a little bit about mental health and explain what mental health is to my understanding, and then I will link it much more to nutrition, which is where I mainly come in or where I love to focus, right? So what is mental health? Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects the way we think, it affects the way we act, it affects the way we feel. It also helps us to determine how we handle stress, relate to other people, and make healthy choices. It is important to know that at some point these things can go wrong. It can go so differently. It doesn't mean that nobody's prone or immune to any of these things that can happen in a way. Maybe you might feel stressed up with something and you're finding it difficult to handle some situations. You might find maybe you've gone through some situation that your body is just not able to handle with them. Stress is something that we go through every single day. It could be a stress as a result of changes in all these economical issues, etc. So again, mental health is important at every stage of life and is important to cover it from childhood, because sometimes things that happen to us when we are children can actually impact us. As my dear friend will always say, Abby always says, our memories, our minds have got memory, and they can actually play up and they can come back and start impacting us later on in life if we don't deal with them. But let's make a little bit of more clarity here and try to describe this a little bit more into details, right? The most important thing that a lot of people talk about is emotional well-being or emotional health or emotional wellness. But what does that really mean? It's just being able to, it refers to how well people can accept, manage their emotions, and cope with challenges throughout life, right? These will differ. This will be so different if you are brought up in a family where all the default is being confrontational. You'll find it easy just to be confrontational. If you're brought up in a family where people always reason out things together, that will be your default. But again, there are other things like the environment where you are, your genetics, and so many different things that can play a part. But that's just being able to accept and manage your emotions. And sometimes this can actually change, can be impacted by many different things. When you're thinking about emotional well-being, it can actually affect how well you can function day to day, how you are able to deal with change. And if you're strained emotionally, you can be able also to put that strain on other people. I was thinking the other day, a dear friend of mine did something not even hard. It was involving her in a way, and just because you're not kind of in a way stable at that moment, you just call and you're lashing out and you're lashing out, and when you're calling later, the friend is like, Claire, what happened? What's really changed? The last minute you were wrapping up and now you're really okay. What has really happened? And it's just because if you're not looking after that, if you're not emotionally okay, you can actually start lashing out on people, knowingly or unknowingly. Then what's the difference between mental health and emotional well-being? This is something that we know. Mental and emotional well-being, they all have psychological differences. Again, I don't claim to be a professional in this area. I'm not going to go much into details to talk about the psychology, of talk about the all the physiology and mechanisms that are involved in that. There are people that are better placed to talk about that, and that's not my place, and I know where my limitations are. But when you're thinking about mental health, it's associated with your overall mental well-being. It includes things like rational thinking, good decision making, and managing difficult situations, right? When you're faced with stress, when you're faced with things that are difficult to talk about, difficult conversations, right? Are you going to be able to manage your moods? Are you going to be able to manage your feelings? Or are you going to just be able to throw in a tantrum? And sometimes you need to know the difference, right? You can be worked up by something and you are reacting to that being worked up. It does make sense. It is natural, right? When you have those, when your body senses you are in danger, and it actually activates those two mechanisms. It can actually either activate the flee, or it can activate the freeze. So if it tells you like it's time for us to flee, you might want to flee out of the situation in very different ways, and people deal with that differently. Or you can freeze and just allow somebody to talk you down, and you can't really respond, you can't really say anything, because that's how your body is coping at that moment. Just being able to understand and manage your moods makes a whole difference. Can your mental health change over time? Absolutely, yes, because of course your mental health can change depending on many factors. These include when you are under stress. I have done very interesting things when I'm stressed up. I've answered wherever that I think that just comes to my mind without necessarily thinking and processing things like that, and that can actually also impact your ability to cope with the situations, right? You're feeling like I'm under threat, I need to fight back, or maybe I need to flee, just disengage from the whole thing, let it be, let the situation do whatever it wants to do. I am out, I'm not here, I'm not engaging in any way, and that could actually impact your mental health. If you're going through a stressful situation, I've openly talked about the loss of my mom last year, and I still have those situations whereby I still deal with the grief, I still deal with sometimes it affects like the way I think about things and things like that, and of course that can also impact on your mental well-being. Of course, you can also have things like if you're working long hours, if you're going for too long without a break, without a holiday, or maybe it might be financial hardships. We have really so many changes happening at the moment, economically, socially, emotionally. All those different things can actually impact your mental health. So how common are these mental illnesses? Again, as I've said, this is not in any way diagnostic. It's just talking from like giving some examples in life. If you're looking at it like just in UK, this is a little bit slightly older data. It is all from 1993 or to 2014. Maybe if you look at current or more newer data post-COVID, these might be so different, because we have been impacted by COVID so differently. Some people's levels of anxiety may have just been risen by COVID. Some people's levels of stress, maybe you lost your job, maybe you lost loved ones, and maybe even just what is happening at the moment. These wars, there's rumors of wars, there's suffering that is happening, and that can trigger any sorts of things. And you can see also there's so much variations and differences between genders, so between the men and between the women. Surprisingly enough, it seems like women tend to be a little bit more on the higher side. It just could be so many things happening to us, isn't it? Women, we have like maybe some of us go through those changes in our emotions, in our moods and things like that. Could be because of the monthly cycle. It could be because of menopause. It could be, I've made a video on how diet can affect and the changes that happen to our bodies through menopause and how that can also impact on our mental health, right? Women, we go through so many things. Childbirth, you can have like post stress traumatic disorder just because of like after you've gone through maybe a very horrific birth. All those kind of things will actually have an impact, will actually affect the way our mental well-being, and that might be one of the reasons why we have a little bit higher prevalence of these emotional illnesses or mental disorders or disease. And then when you're looking at it again in terms of these by gender, by age, you find that again going back into teenagehood or young adults, that's another time where people can be struggling with things like identity crisis, peer pressure, changes in transitioning from school into colleges, into universities, trying to start life. Maybe some are getting married, trying to establish life, maybe relationships don't work, relationships falling apart, maybe parental issues. There are so many different things, and that tells you actually quite a big population of people might be impacted or living with somebody that is impacted by ill mental health. So what causes ill mental health? Again, I'm not going to talk much into this. As I said, I'm not a professional to do that, but there's no single cause for mental illnesses. There could be just factors that contribute, such as adverse childhood experiences. Abby usually says the first couple of years of life. We know that fetal programming occurs within the first 1,000 days of life. That can actually set out what will happen to your body in terms of nutrition, in terms of your body and things like that. But when it comes to, again, sometimes there could be things like history of abuse or history of anything that could be of any nature within childhood that can actually also still come back later on. As I already said, that the mind can't keep, or the body knows how to keep scores, so that could play up later on. Things like, again, medical conditions that can actually impact on your mental health. There can be some biological factors. Some of them can be genetic. It could be like maybe something that happened through genetics, transferences from one generation to another. Could be chemical imbalances in the brain. There could be things like use of alcohol or drugs. There could be things like feeling of loneliness and isolation for one reason or the other. We saw that a lot during COVID-19, and all those can impact our cause mental illnesses. So what can we do? I'm not going to go, again, as I said, much into psychology, all those kind of things, because that's outside the scope of what I can deal with. But what can we do in a way so that how can we look after our mental and emotional well-being? So number one, we can do regular exercises, right? If you're thinking about exercise, the NHS recommends 150 minutes of exercise per week, which means that you can actually break that down. Just doing about 30 minutes of walking every day can actually help boost your mood and improve your mental health. When I feel stressed up with anything or worked up with anything, I found that when I go to the gym or when I go for a run, it just kind of clears my mind, and that could explain why quite a lot of times, oftentimes, I find that I want to really be engaging with exercise. Small amounts of exercise can help, so don't really be discouraged and say I must be setting up a given amount of time to be able to go to exercise. I've clearly, openly said I go to the gym nowadays, but when I go to the gym, basically I do 30 minutes and I'm out, because I don't like to overkill, number one, and number two, I believe in small adjustments do make a major shift. So when I'm doing the small adjustments, it could be like I'm adjusting by starting off 20 minutes or maybe going for a walk rather than taking like a car or driving. I can go by bus and then come off maybe a couple of stops earlier, walk to the place I'm going to. Instead of taking a lift, I can actually walk the stairs. Those adjustments that you can actually do, they all contribute towards your ability to be able to log into those steps and those movements. Other thing to do, you see already there, eating healthy regular meals and ensuring that you're staying hydrated. A balanced diet and plenty of water can help you, of course, improve your energy and also improve your focus through the day. But also try to limit things like beverages, try to limit things like particularly caffeine, because caffeine can also impact on your mental health in a different way than you want to. Now I'm going to look a little bit about how does really your diet link to mental health, because that's something that, again, I'm very keen with and understanding. The relationship is pretty complex. It's something that we know, the relationship, it can be really complex, but of course we are what we eat, right? What you eat can impact how you eat, you feel. Your mood can be impacted by your food, and so being able to eat well can help you feel better. And of course, you don't have to make those massive changes again. You can try these simple tips that I'm going to share now on this slide. Eat regularly. I've already mentioned that, right? You're trying to avoid spikes in your dropping and rising up of your blood sugar levels, which can make you become, if you're really having very low sugar levels, they can actually make you feel tired. And if you're feeling tired, that can actually result in bad tempers. When I am worked up and I'm tired, I can be really not the best person to spend time with, because that's something that can actually just trigger you and put you on the edge for anything possible that you can think of. So trying to eat regularly. I've already mentioned staying hydrated, because if you're having dehydration, that can actually impact on your mood, energy levels, and your ability to concentrate. You need to eat the right balance of fats which are needed for your brain, so things like rapeseed oil, nuts, seeds, avocados, fish, avocado, milk, egg. All those things can actually help you to be able to kind of boost your mental being and provide the right fuel that is needed for your mental health. But try to avoid processed foods in general, in particular things like trans fats, which are often found in these ultra processed food or processed food, and those can actually again impact not only your health, your mental health or your mind, but they can also impact your heart. So being careful about those things. Also, when you're eating, try to include more whole grains, fruits and vegetables in your diet, because of course they do have those vitamins and minerals which are needed for your brain and also for your body to stay well and to stay healthy. Include some protein with every meal, because of course there are those amino acids that can actually help your brain to be able to regulate your mood. Look after your gut. There's so much research now that has gone into showing the relationship between the gut health and the mental health. And somebody was saying, if you look at how the gut looks like and look at how the brain looks like, they actually look similar. And some people are actually suggesting that the gut to be the second brain, so you can actually impact all those impulses, and what is happening to your mental health can actually be impacted by what is happening in your gut. So you need to eat and look after your gut, because your gut can actually reflect on how you're feeling. Your gut can speed up or slow down if you're stressed out. So eat things like fruits and vegetables. They have the roughage, they have the refuges that is needed, again things like beans, probiotics that are needed to kind of in a way provide the good food for the good bacteria in your gut, and those good gut bacteria will actually result in a much more healthy gut, and healthy gut can impact on your mood, can impact on your mental well-being and emotional well-being. Of course, beware again of things like caffeinated drinks and how caffeine affects your mood. So you can actually try, if you're somebody who really loves particularly things like teas and coffee, like me, I love teas, I love my coffee. You might find that there is also like teas, coffees, cola, all those are caffeinated drinks. You might want to kind of in a way reduce their consumption, particularly closer to the bedtime, because if you're drinking them closer to the bedtime, that can actually mean that they can make you become maybe anxious, irritable, or maybe just lose sleep. If I don't sleep well, the next day I'm not going to be a very great person to stay close to. So again, that can actually impact your body again. So what should you eat? Now could be the question you're asking me at the moment. You're asking, so Claire, what can I eat for my mental well-being, or my mental health, or my emotional well-being? Number one, think about the Eat Well guide. That's something that in the UK we use the NHS they use the Eat Well guide. And the Eat Well guide, as you can see an example, they just tells you the kind of foods that you should be concentrating on and the kind of foods that you should be actually like staying away. So if I just try to highlight, like in this case here, you see things like here you've got the starches, the starchy foods, trying to ensure that you are eating the whole varieties, trying to ensure that if you're eating even bread, you might want to do the wholemeal bread, pasta, wholemeal pasta, etc. And then you've got those fruits and vegetables that will actually also show fill up your plate. And when you're eating that, again, remember, eat a rainbow, because you have all these different phytochemicals or phytonutrients that are important, and they can actually kind of in a way help with different things in terms of your health. So you've got those antioxidants that will help to neutralize reactive oxygen species. You've got things like different phytonutrients that can actually also play a role in your health in general. And then when it comes to things like, you know, those crisps, chips, chocolate, they're outside, and if you eat them, that will be really in moderation. Things like the butters and the oils, keeping them in moderation. But also here we've got those proteins. So you've got your milk, you've got again, looking at here, things like all the other food stuff that you can think of, like your meat, etc. Again, trying to ensure that when you're eating your plate, it does reflect that in the end. Always remember, a man needs to eat 2,500 calories a day. A woman needs to eat 2,000 calories a day. That is if you're aiming to maintain weight. If you're aiming to lose weight, then you need to work on your basal metabolic rate, and then think about, like, if I want to lose weight, how much weight do I need to lose? And you can work back to see how many calories should I cut down from my diet, which will help me to lose the weight. Of course, if you start to exercise, that counts as an extra calories that you can eat. So you can actually decide and say, instead of eating 2,000 calories, I'm going to, and then if I want to lose weight, I'm going to go to exercise. Maybe I can burn 500 calories and still eat 2,000 calories, because I have actually expended more than I needed by going to the exercise. That can still help you with losing weight. Also, if you want some resources, you can go to Mind UK. They have really good advice around food and mental health, and they provide also some tips that you can use, particularly when you're on things like medication, etc. And that can actually help you if you're trying to work through your mental health and mental well-being. The other thing that you can think about is sharing meals with people. I know some people are not very people oriented. I was talking with my dear friend earlier on, and he was telling me, like, Claire, when it comes to people, I wish I just had an island of myself. I'll go and live there by myself, forget about anything else, and just be by myself. But people can be helpful, particularly eating with people. It has other psychological, sociological, and biological benefits, because of course it will give us a sense of rhythm and regularity. Like in my house, we eat mainly around 5:30 or 6, depending on when all of us have come back together home, and that is something that I usually look forward to. I look forward to being able to sit down on dinner time and just being able to eat together as a family, and that's really kind of really nice. Of course, again, if you're eating in an upright chair can help with digestion. When you eat, don't just finish eating and rush into social media, whatever it is. Try to allow your body time to digest the food again before you go to bed. That will be really helpful. Of course, also when you are eating, trying to talk and listening, that can slow how we eat, so we don't end up eating too fast. And of course, apart from that, it might just be nice maybe once in a while. In my household, we try almost 7 days a week to eat together one meal, because of course breakfast, everybody's running up and down. Lunch, we are never home together, all of us, but at least dinner times we try. Most of the time, I think almost every single evening, we try to sit together and eat together. And of course, also try to choose a meal that is easy to prepare. Don't make it complicated. If you don't know how to cook a lasagna, don't go cooking lasagna, right? You can look out on YouTube, is a good place to start. Look for new recipes, but don't let that become a hindrance or something that will make you procrastinate, telling yourself, you know what, I need to know to do the best, I need to do that, I need to do the other thing, because at the end of the day, Start small. At the end of the day, do something which will catapult you, move you into the right steps and that you need to have a better health at the end of the day. Right. The other thing to think about is, again, share responsibilities. If you have a family, don't just leave it to one person. Like, I think being an African woman from an African home, we always have this notion that the kitchen is for the woman. It's the woman who needs to do all the things. The women, right? But remember, at the end of the day, like particularly if you're living not from an African, you're an African but not in an African setting, remember to share the household chores. Don't just leave, like say, a wife is left to do everything, particularly when you have a working couple and things like that. Involve also your kids. Let your kids like learn how to do washing up, etc. You might, if you have older kids, you might want to try to teach them also how to cook, etc. Or all those things. Sharing also gives you that opportunity to also talk to people and let them know how you're feeling and how you're coping with your mental health. Keep off the television, so that at the end of the day, just simple things that can help you talk to people. I'm going to quickly talk a little bit about eating disorders, but I'm not going to talk about it in too much details because, again, as I said, that's a very different spectrum and it's not what I want to think about. But if you're using food as a negative coping mechanism, that could actually mean something different that you need to deal with. It could be maybe when you're upset, you reach out to food. When you're hungry, you reach out to food. When you're happy, you reach out to food. That could be something that you need to deal with. Or the other way around, when you're upset, you stay away from food. Or you have this unhealthy relationship with food, that can also impact on your mental health. So if you find maybe you're kind of getting away or evasive from food, not eating regularly and things like that, that could actually mean there is something. Don't just assume it and don't just neglect it, because if you don't look after your mental health, you better start looking at it much more earlier than once it gets more drawn away, and then you have to start dealing with medication and all these kind of things. Healthy diet, I've already mentioned that, but also be physically active, avoid things like cigarettes, alcohol, have a good night's sleep, and of course make sleep your priority. Stick to a schedule, ensure you're getting enough sleep. Blue light from devices is something that you need to stay away from screens. We love our screens, we love our phones. We have these interesting conversations between phones and bedtime a lot of times, but please, if you really want to have a good night's sleep, it might be just worthwhile like avoiding that, reducing it, or avoiding all the way. Some of us use an excuse to say, my alarm, I need my phone, but put your phone away in such a way that it doesn't become a disruption for your sleep. And also when it comes to sleeping, check the temperature of the room. How hot, how cold. If it is too hot, you might not be able to sleep if you're sweating too much. And if it's too cold, if my feet are cold, for example, I wouldn't be able to sleep. So again, regulating things like that can have a really great impact in your body. The other thing is try relaxing activities, right? Explore things like relaxation, wellness programs and apps that exist, which can actually include things like meditation, muscle relaxation, breathing exercises. I love some guy, I think it's called Wolfman or something, that he does these breathing exercises that can be really useful, right? Because if you have something that is eating up your mental health, sometimes you find you become irrational in how you think, you become irrational in how you deal with the things, and maybe just breathing in and breathing out. That's what my son says, mommy, in and out, right? Just kind of having those things. You could as well try like aromatherapy, something that relaxes you so that it helps you to have your mind at peace. Of course, regularly schedule things like journaling. I love journaling. I've done journaling throughout the whole of this year up until today, and it's just one of those things that I really treasure, because I understand, like, I journal my thoughts, I journal my tough days. I have tough days. Confession is good for the soul. I journal when I have great days, when I have days of sadness, when I have days of sorrows, all those things. I do journal them, and I think when I look back, I always say maybe one day I might write a book of my experiences, and it's those journals that will help me. One day when I look back and see how God has been so good to me, how he has helped me overcome so many things in my life, I'll be able to go back and look at that in the end. The other thing, again, set goals and priorities. Decide what you must get done. Sometimes we just want to do everything, and that's not helping, particularly if you have any mental illnesses or you're not emotionally stable. Try not to take on too many things, no new tasks. Maybe sometimes learn to say no. It's not one of the easiest things that we find it easy to say. I find it difficult to say no to some things, but sometimes so that you can prioritize your mental well-being, it might just be as well that you can say, well, I love you, but not today. I'll do it another time, or sorry, I can't do it, because you're trying to look after you, looking after what matters to you. So be mindful to know what you've accomplished at the end of the day, so you'll be able to know also what you have not been able to do. And do not judge yourself harshly if you haven't done it. There's a difference between being lazy and a difference between if you're not feeling well and trying to recover, and just knowing the differences between them. Then the next thing to do is practice gratitude. I mean, you can go on Abby's channel. She talks about gratitude. She's done 40 days of gratitude challenge. Amazing, and things like that. But gratitude is a good way of reminding yourself daily of the things that you are grateful for, right? Be specific and write them down. And then you can replay them in your mind. I'm grateful for my son. I'm grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for my job. I'm grateful for my emotional well-being. I'm grateful for my brothers and sisters. I'm grateful for my house. I'm grateful for the food that I have. You know, be specific. Write them. Repeat them in your mind over and over again to remind yourself how blessed you are. You know, and then focus on positivity, right? It might look like the world is standing against you. My world is come crumbling down. But am I just going to sit back and think and say, it is over? No. Identify and challenge your negative and unhelpful thoughts. If I start to think about something that is not really helpful, I should be able to challenge and say, but Claire, you're not that. Maybe somebody has called your name, or somebody has done something and you're feeling like you should challenge it and say, Claire, you're not that. And Abby talks again about affirmations. Positive affirmations of yourself. I have a good mind. I have a sound mind. I have the mind of Christ, if you're a Christian, right? I walk in power. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I belong to Jesus. You know, those positive affirmations can help you quite a lot. Stay connected. A lot of times, if you're going through maybe a mental health issue, you'll want to stay away, because sadly there's so much stigma on this topic that when you want to try to talk to somebody about mental illnesses, for us who are Christians, we'll start to say, you don't have enough faith, you should have cast that out, that's the devil, you should bind it out, don't even think about it, don't even entertain that thought, or maybe you don't have enough faith, and things like that, because of the stigma that surrounds this whole mental health thing. Sometimes even people find it difficult to share and talk about their mental illnesses. And so reach out to a friend, reach out to somebody that you think will not be spreading your words around. You need, of course, already, I usually say, if I have a broken leg, won't I go to the hospital and reach out and say, my leg is broken, right? If I had a headache, I will take paracetamol for it. And so if you have an issue in your mental health, it could be any personality disorder, it could be whatever it is, don't be scared of it, don't be afraid of it, embrace it. And if you are like a Christian, pray and say to God, claim the word of God. But denial doesn't help anything. You can't deny and say, I am not. It's good to affirm what you're not and what you are in God, but also it is also good to, and kind of in a way, just come before God and say, I acknowledge I have this thing, and then bring it to the authority of Jesus and say, at the name of Jesus, every knee must bow, including whatever condition, and every tongue confess. And so you can actually get that emotional support and maybe practical support when maybe you're facing something like depression and you can't just lift out of bed. You might need somebody to come and help you get your food. Maybe you might be erupting at somebody that has not really hurt you in any way. They say if you're not careful, you'll bleed on somebody that didn't cut you, right? When you start to have those things, when they understand and they know Claire's anger issues are not because she's just a terrible woman to be around, but it's because there's something else going on. Then they will be able to understand, maybe challenge you and say, what are you thinking at the moment? What can we do to help you come out of this state? Because it can't be just maybe an episode, one-off or things like that you can be able to deal with at the end of the day. And so finally, as I learned this, you need to know when to seek professional help, right? Seek professional help, particularly if you're having difficulties with sleeping, because stress can actually make any underlying issues become worse, right? If you're having appetite changes, you have unwanted weight loss, or the weight has changed, struggling to get out of bed because of your mood, difficulties in concentrating, loss of interest in things that you usually find enjoyable, inability to function in your daily activities and things like that, seek professional help. You're better off getting it wrong, and the diagnosis is different than staying back feeling like ashamed and embarrassed to talk about because of thinking about, or what will people label me, and then you don't end up getting the help that you need. Because at the end of the day, your health is your priority, and your mental well-being matters the most, because mind matters. And if you don't look after your mind, you might have a breakdown one day. People will wonder what really happened to this person, when if you'll have identified it earlier, gotten the help that you need earlier, you could have actually solved and sorted some of these things. Because at the end of the day, we will find difficult situations, we'll find difficulties with dealing with difficult things which will come along life. Nobody prepares you for that, but once you know the coping mechanisms, or you know what you're going through, you can find it easy to be able to talk about it. I hope that this was helpful, and if you find this really helpful in any way, why not support us by liking it, sharing this information, or you might as well consider subscribing to this channel, which will help us continue bringing more information like this, which might be somebody's survival guide one day in life. Have a great day.